As more and more people return to the workplace, many are heading back to a new set of rules and expectations in a rapidly changing landscape, from vaccine policies to perhaps a shift in job duties. So here to address some common questions and sort through the myths and facts, we are joined by employment lawyer Lior Samfiru. Good morning, Lior. So with more and more businesses releasing vaccine policies, we've heard this statement a lot and more lately. My employer gets to decide whether it wants all employees vaccinated. Is this a myth or a fact?
You're absolutely right, Candace. We've heard this very, very often, and it's problematic enough, this statement, that I'm actually going to call that a myth. And the reason why that is a myth, it's because employers still have to comply with human rights legislation. Employers have to comply with the law. And ultimately, even though an employer may think, well, it's my business, I get to decide whether I want everyone vaccinated, we have human rights laws that do say and suggest that mandating a vaccine might be discriminatory on a number of grounds, so that is problematic. Now, for employers that want to do that, they do need the support of government. Here in Canada, we have very, very few government mandates with respect to mandating vaccines. If that changes, yes, employers will be able to do that. But until and unless that happens, it is a myth to say, and it's incorrect to say, that the employer can simply decide to have all its employees vaccinated. There will be consequences potentially for employers and liability if they do that.
Okay, Lior, here's another. I will lose my severance entitlements if I don't accept my employer's offer by their deadline. So again, is this myth or fact?
So Candace, every severance offer has a deadline. You have to sign by Friday at 5 or Monday at 5, whatever it is. And there's that pressure you feel you have to sign it or else you lose something. That is a myth. It is an absolute myth. Your legal rights don't expire Friday at 5. In fact, you have up to 2 years to pursue your rights. So no, it is a myth and it's incorrect, frankly false to say that you will lose something if you don't sign by that deadline. Ensure that your severance offer is correct and proper. That deadline does not matter.
Okay. And as we mentioned off the top, a lot of people are heading back to an office and a job that looks different than it did pre-pandemic. So what about this statement? My employer has the right to change my job duties, pay, or job location. Is that a myth or a fact?
A lot of people are coming back to jobs that are different than the way they were, at different hours, less pay, maybe even a relocation. So the rule here is this: an employer does not have a right to make significant changes to the terms of employment. Pay cuts that are significant, changes in hours, etc. Your job terms are your job terms. And if an employer does make such significant changes, that could be considered a constructive dismissal. So no, that is an absolute myth, Candace.
Okay, and finally, Lior, my employer can lay me off temporarily or put me on a leave of absence if I don't get vaccinated or if the company is struggling because of COVID. Is that a myth or a fact?
So that is yet another myth and a very common one, especially over the last year and a half as we're struggling with this pandemic. Despite the pandemic, an employer does not have a right to quote unquote suspend employment, to put someone off work without pay, whether it's as a layoff or a leave of absence. By doing that, again, that's a constructive dismissal. An employee can choose to treat that as a termination and get severance, get compensation. So despite the pandemic, despite what we're hearing here with vaccines, your employer does not have the automatic right to put you off on a leave of absence. That gives you entitlements. A lot of employers don't realize the liability that comes with that.
Okay, Lior, thanks again for your expertise and for taking the time to educate our audience. Once again, folks, that's employment lawyer Lior Samfiru.